Turning the page here, Bengals and the Lions. America's Game of the Week, I believe. Late afternoon slate, 4:25 kick. Stripe the jungle. This is just another situation where it's just heartbreaking that Joe Burrow obviously is not out there. I mean, if Burrow's playing in this game, shoot, maybe you still have a 2-2 record, but it just feels like a massive game, and you're at home, and you've got an opportunity to prove to the world that you're still a team that is a threat and one of the best teams in the league. But unfortunately, no Joe Burrow, and now you're sitting here with a 10.5-point spread. And no matter, and I'm a very optimistic Bengals fan. I always try to spin it in a positive light, maybe sometimes to a fault. But sitting here for this game, it's just hard to imagine that they win this game. Like, you can try to talk yourself into them keeping it close and covering the spread, but flat out winning the football game and improving to 3-2, I mean, your only chance really is that, the only thing you got going for you, I should say, is the fact that it's at home. But that first 3 and out, it's not going to be much of an advantage that you're at home, because the Boo Bird's certainly going to be out at Paycor Stadium. So a lot has to go right for Cincinnati in this game. Detroit obviously dropped their Week 1 game against Green Bay. They've looked really, really good since then. They've got new coordinators. Ben Johnson's gone. Aaron Glenn is gone. They've replaced them. Dan Campbell obviously still at the helm. And they're in a spot where they're pretty healthy right now, too. They're not missing any of their big-time players. And that's allowed them to be really successful. And they're playing good offensive football. They're playing good defensive football, and just all around playing good football. And they look like a top 5 team in the National Football League at this point. But we'll go through some keys to victory. Not much room for error for Cincinnati in this game, considering all the talent that Detroit has and considering the product that Cincinnati has put out on the field these last 2 weeks. But key to victory number 1, you have to get back to disciplined football. All right, you have to. One thing that Zach Taylor has always been able to hang his hat on as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals is that his teams don't quit. As we've talked about, past couple of weeks, they've quit on him a little bit, albeit huge deficits. Number 2 is teams are buttoned up. They're not undisciplined. They don't go out there and have a ton of penalties. They don't have a ton of procedural issues. I'm talking big picture since Zach Taylor has been here. Did they have some issues? For instance, the Tennessee game, right, where Joe Burrow was clearly frustrated offensively with some of the procedural stuff? Yes, but in large part, big picture, Zach Taylor's teams are disciplined. They aren't penalized. I mean, you were outmatched and outgunned in the Denver game, and you played horrible. But when you have the procedural stuff, when you have the false starts, when you have the illegal men downfield, when you have the holdings, you're just not going to be able to compete, especially in a game like this against Detroit. Have to not be very penalized in this game. The pre-snap stuff can't be there. Amarius Mims, we'll talk about him in a second, but the holding stuff, being down the field when we're not supposed to be down the field, defensively grabbing on, you can't be making boneheaded mistakes out there in this game, because if you do that and you're the more penalized team at home against Detroit, you got no chance. No chance. Absolutely have to be more buttoned up in this game and more disciplined. Key to victory number 2, Trey Hendrickson, he's got to be special. He has to be special in this game. He was non-existent against Denver. He got his pay raise. All right, he's out there making a lot of money for this team. He has got to be excellent in this game. And by excellent, I mean I need at least 2 sacks out of him. At least 2 sacks out of him. And he's probably going to have a difficult matchup. That offensive line for Detroit, is it as good as it's been in recent years? Well, maybe not. But they still got Penei Sewell, and he's an absolute dog, and I'm sure he'll be matched up on Trey Hendrickson a lot in this game. Trey Hendrickson has to find a way to win. He's got to find a way to get to the quarterback and bring him down. In the Minnesota game, we said, Myles Murphy, he showed up a little bit. Joseph Osai, we saw him. How'd they do against Denver? Yeah, horrible. They were absolutely awful in that game. Unfortunately, those were seemingly whiffs by Duke Tobin. And Duke Tobin deserves a lot of criticism for how this season has gone to this point. Because when you have the high-paid guys, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you've got to draft and develop really well. And at one point, Cincinnati could do that. But in the past couple of years, the drafting has been horrible. It's been absolutely horrible. Like, you look across this team and you're like, where are your guys? Like, you got a couple stars, but then beyond that, you don't got much. You don't got much at all. And I think Duke Tobin deserves a lot of criticism for that. But Trey Hendrickson is one of those guys that you do have, and he can't afford to have games like he did last week where he just doesn't do much and doesn't impact the game. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough help around him. Unfortunately, TJ Slayton, who I was excited about in free agency, that was your big move, bringing him in for Green Bay to shore up that interior. He hasn't done much. Hasn't been able to do much stopping the run, and hasn't been able to get any interior pass rush on opposing quarterbacks there as well. Trey Hendrickson has to show up, need at least 2 sacks for him. Need at least 2 sacks from him in this game if Cincinnati is going to have an opportunity to win. Marius Mims needs to bounce back. The offensive line for Cincinnati is dreadful. All right? It doesn't take a genius to tell you that. It's very bad. Orlando Brown Jr., traffic cone. Can't move. Gets beat all the time. Not sure what happened to him. The interior, we knew it was going to be bad. It's been bad. Ted Karras, we love him. Great guy, great in the community. He's played great football for us in the past. He's been terrible as well. Marius Mims has got to be the one guy that you can say if somebody is going to play competent offensive line for us, it's going to be Marius Mims. And he did not do that last week. He gave up the 2 sacks, and he had the penalties. Marius Mims has been okay leading up to the game against Denver last week, and he's got to be solid. I am still a big believer in Marius Mims. I still think he's a really good football player. I still think he's going to be a starter for Cincinnati for a long time, and I still think they're finally going to break their streak of not giving a drafted offensive lineman a second contract. I think they will give Marius Mims a second contract here in Cincinnati, but he's got to wake up and he's got to be better because it was bad last week, and the offensive line is too bad for him to go out there and be bad as well. He's got to be the lone bright spot along that offensive line for this team to have a chance. He's got to be better. He has it in him. We'll see if he is able to do it. The false starts can't happen. The giving up the sacks can't happen. Being downfield when you're not supposed to can't happen. Obviously, it was Mims that had the big penalty when you finally were able to push the ball down the football field. 35-plus yard game for T. Higgins. That's coming back because of penalty on your offensive lineman. Need him to bounce back in this game and at least give Browning some protection from that side. And we'll see, by the way, because good chance he's going up against Aidan Hutchinson. Not sure if you heard of him, but he's a pretty good football player. Mims has to be better. That's key to victory number 3. Key to victory number 4, and it's hard to believe I'm saying it, but Jake Browning's got to let it rip. And obviously he was letting it rip in Minnesota and Jacksonville, and he was letting it rip to the wrong team. And that was an issue. But what Detroit can do on offense, and we're going to see, really, by the way, the state of this Bengals defense, how they really are. Because I think there's some of us that are like, I mean, clearly it's not good, right? Clearly it's not good. But there's people like me that are like, well, if the offense can just kind of put you in a spot where they're in the game, I think you could see the defense play okay. That's kind of my mindset. But if they go up there and give up 40 or 35 plus to Detroit, then we're going to be like, well, yeah, defense is still just as bad. They still have a lot of the same issues they had last year. I don't think there's any denying it's clearly better than last year. All right, but I don't know if it's good or competent or anything like that. Again, I lean towards if the offense can keep you in the game, I think you'll see them play competent defense. But obviously the offense hasn't been able to do that these last 2 weeks. But Jake Browning has to let it rip because Detroit's going to score some points in this game. And if you go out there and score 3 points again, you're going to get your butt whooped, obviously. You're never going to win games in the NFL scoring 3 points, and obviously that's what Cincinnati did last week. He's got to let it rip. He looked like he was playing tight. Obviously, Taylor and company were trying to keep it close to the vest, but it's just the Bengals aren't good enough for their quarterback to just go out there and check it down and manage the game and turn around and hand the ball off. They're not good enough to do that. They have to ask a little bit more out of him, right? And at times, he has shown it. He's shown it in 2023. He obviously hasn't shown it at all this year. Played at an incredibly high level in college. He can let it rip a little bit, but Jake Browning has been downright bad, right? And I think some people aren't giving him enough flack for how bad he's been, just because I get it, around him, the offensive line's bad, defense bad, coaching bad, penalties bad, turnovers bad. I get it. But Jake Browning's been really, really bad too. And I think he's kind of avoided some of that criticism. And if he goes out there and he's bad again against the Lions, as we talked about on yesterday's show, you've got to add a quarterback, I think, unless you're going to punt on the season. But I don't think that would be a good idea whatsoever. And by a quarterback, I mean one of those 2 guys that's in New York right now. But he's got to let it rip in this game. He's got to. He's got to trust it. He's got to trust what he sees and let it rip. He's got guys out there that are playmakers. Jamar Chase, playmaker. T. Higgins, playmaker. Mitchell Tinsley, playmaker. Gesicki, playmaker. He's got guys. Give them opportunities. Try not to put the ball in harm's way. But Detroit's going to score some points, and if you're just having these long, sustained drives where you don't have a big play, and next thing you know you're kicking a field goal or you're punting it 5 times, that's not going to work. He's got to let it rip in this game. And by letting it rip, that might mean he throws 3 picks, and that might be his last start as a Cincinnati Bengal. But he cannot just be uber conservative in the game. If he plays the way he did against Denver, that's not going to win, no matter how much stuff goes right for Cincinnati in the game. He's not going to win like that. Just not going to happen against this Detroit team. He's got to let it rip. And lastly, this one's obvious. You could say it every week, but more so important for Cincinnati now, considering all the issues they have. Got to win the turnover battle. It's the reason you won the first 2 games against Cleveland And, of course, against Jacksonville as well. And this was a team that in the past we've sat here and we said they are too turnover reliant. And I agree. At times this Bengals team is too turnover reliant. The bend don't break style. Oh, they get a turnover, right? Not forcing a lot of punts. But they need to find a way to get the ball on defense. Have to. Absolutely have to in this game. Goff usually doesn't throw it and put it in harm's way. Maybe he will if you can get some pass rush on him. If Trey Hendrickson can be bearing down on him a little bit. The running backs, they're very careful with the football. Jahmyr Gibbs, by the way, scares me to death in this game. Just feels like he's going to have a massive game for Detroit. I don't know if we've got the speed to go out there and tackle him in the open field, to be completely honest with you. And those guys don't have fumbling issues either, but you got to find a way to punch the football out. Got to find a way to create turnovers in this game. Have to win the turnover battle. If you lose it, you're going to lose. But have to find a way to win the turnover battle in this football game. So basically, lots of things need to go right. Those are my 5 keys to victory. Get back to discipline football. Hendrickson's got to be special. Mims needs to bounce back. Jake Browning's got to let it rip. And you got to win the turnover battle. But there's a lot of other things that need to go right for you as well. Got to tackle well, obviously, right? Got to run. I didn't even mention the run game, right? Did it take a minuscule step in the right direction last week against Denver? Sure, you can say that. All right, that doesn't give us much opportunity to be that fired up, but it looked a little bit better this past week than it did against Minnesota. Obviously, got to run the ball better. Obviously, got to protect better. Obviously, got to play with that chip on your shoulder. I want to see somebody go out there and set the tone in this game. I want to see somebody go out there and lay their shoulder down and run it right into somebody. Get fired up. Get out there and hit somebody early. I want to see some emotion. I want to see some positive juice early in the game. And you got that last week in Denver, right? You came up with some first downs. You got down the field, and you kicked 3, right? Obviously, everyone wants a touchdown. You kicked 3, whatever. But the emotion kind of was just, it was down. All right, you're at home. All right, this crowd, they'll get behind you if you show that you can be competent and go out there and play hard and keep the game close. They'll help you out. But if you go out there 3-and-out punt, hand the ball off, tackle to the line of scrimmage, crowd's going to turn on you very, very quickly. Interested to see the turnout, by the way, in this game at Paycor Stadium for the Cincinnati Bengals. Stripe the jungle, obviously. We'll see how exactly that looks. But, and you hate to say this as an NFL team. You hate to say it, but the Bengals and Zach Taylor have to keep this game relatively close. And it has to feel like you have at least a chance in this game. Because we've all sat up here, or I've sat up here and said that I think Zach Taylor's job is going to be just fine. But if you continue to get blown out in the National Football League, I don't care who your ownership group is, you're not going to be just fine. You can lose. Zach Taylor can lose a bunch of games this year. But if he continues to lose in the fashion in which he is losing, he could be in serious, serious trouble. And the next 2 teams up on the schedule are the Lions and the Packers. Incredible offenses, incredible teams all around. We'll see what Cincinnati can put out on the field and see how prepared they look. Because they got to look more prepared than they have these past 2 games. They just didn't look prepared. They didn't look ready at all these past 2 games. And that obviously is a direct reflection of the head coach. And he needs to be better in this game.